Hello everyone, it's Stephen Grinnell from Energy Medicine, and I today want to talk to you about pain and inflammation. The two tend to go hand in hand, even though from a body point of view they're quite separate. Pain and rehabilitation seems like a very short subject. If I've got pain, I can go to the doctors or I can go to the chemist and I can get medication to help with both. So I can get over-the-counter painkillers that are quite strong, paracetamol, aspirin, those type of things. I can also get ibuprofen or Nurofen or some of the other branded elements for anti-inflammatory. I can then, if I need to, go to the doctors and get stronger painkillers, sort of cocodamol and things like that, or I can get naproxen as an anti-inflammatory. The next level is more injection based, so you can have things like morphine and other quite high level anti-inflammatories, and that's sort of hospital based. Now all of this medication is great because it works, and what it actually does is it shuts off your communication system, so it stops the nerve communicating. So it's a bit like turning the power off to your computer and say, right, there's no more signal. So because there's no signal, it's fixed. So it doesn't actually help anything, it just switches the system off. Now when you think about it in those sort of formats, you think, okay, well what would happen if I didn't take the medication? How would that work? What do we do before medication? Now obviously psychologically, all pain is in the brain, so everything is sent to the brain. That's where you feel pain. So the actual tissue itself doesn't feel pain in that way. The reason for pain is it's communicating to help at a physiological level from a cellular point of view to send lots of cells to help deal with the injury or the problem, whether it's an infection, whether you've cut yourself, broke something, injured something. It's about the body trying to repair itself and to rebuild the tissue. So that's what pain's for. The other thing it's for is to stop you moving around. So if you hurt your foot, you don't want to be walking on it. If you hurt your shoulder, you want to support it and hold it. The next phase in healing is looking at inflammation. So what happens is the affected area swells up, if that's internally or externally, so you can't always see the swelling, and it swells up, and it means it holds lots more cells there and fluid there so that it can repair the damaged tissue. So it's got a lot more cells to do the repair work, and then as the swelling drops down, it still repairs it, but it gradually goes into that sort of rehab phase, that remodeling phase. So you've got three clear steps: pain, inflammation, remodeling. Now pain and inflammation tend to feel like they're coming at the same time, so you tend to get caught in a pain inflammation loop where your body feels pain, sends chemicals down, so it sends cells, chemicals to be able to help. You then have inflammation, again the same, and it tends to work in that cycle, so it works together. Now the problem is that if you have a painkiller and an anti-inflammatory, so anti being stopping inflammation, you're stopping communication to your brain to say there's any pain, and you're stopping communication to your brain and the various other sources within your body to say we don't need any inflammation, so we don't need any cells coming down to help an affected area. So what you're actually doing is breaking that pain inflammation loop. Okay, so what's the implications of that? So if your brain doesn't know there's any pain, it can't send any natural pain relief, but it also then can't sell the precursor, all the sort of chemicals, all the cells to be helped start repairing the tissue. The second phase is if you have an anti-inflammatory, so a drug to stop inflammation, it means that your body hasn't got all of the cells and the swelling to be able to help repair the tissue or the area of your body that's damaged. Okay, so we've stopped the communication on both those levels. Now the body will repair itself over time, so it's not that it doesn't, but the question is, if that happens at a chemical level, how does the body repair itself? Because you stop the communication so it doesn't know there's anything wrong. Well, that happens in several ways. The first is we're talking about a painkiller, an anti-inflammatory, which is chemical, so it comes into your body and it's communicated a lot through your nerve system, And from my previous episodes, you'll know that the nerve system is 98% electronic and only 2% chemical, which is why you need medication quite regularly for it to be effective or to actually last and feel anything. And if it's quite severe pain, you'll find that you'll need stronger and stronger medication to have a bigger impact on your nerve system. So that's the bit that obviously is the key thing to consider. The flip side to that is when the pain relief is wearing off is when the body starts healing itself, which is why if you have anti-inflammatories, it can take quite a long time for your body to sort of reduce the swelling, because every time the medication wears off, your body's desperately trying to get in to put some inflammation there to be able to heal that part of your body. Whether it's a knee, a hip, an ankle, whatever it is, it's desperately trying to do that. When the pain relief wears off, and most of that is in the evening and when you're asleep at night, when the pain relief wears off, suddenly then your body's trying to send all the various chemical cells to be able to help with pain relief naturally, because obviously then the pain starts to increase. Now the reason I mention night is that most of your growth and repair is done when you're asleep. So you've got two nervous systems, one that you can control and one that you don't control. So the one that you control is the one that I'm using now. I'm talking. If you're watching it on video, I'm moving my hands around, smiling and moving up my body around. So all of the stuff that you can consciously do is controlled by one nervous system. All the things, the important stuff as I call it, that you can't control, like breathing, heart rate, digestion, tissue repair, is all done automatically. Now, within that, most of that automatic system is most prevalent and most active when you're asleep, which is why sleep is so important. And people talk about you need about 8 hours, which is roughly right. People need between 6 and 8 hours. You get into a rhythm and it depends, but from a physical point of view, certainly that's what you need. And if you do lots of activity and lots of, say, physical development, so you're training a lot like an athlete, you might need more, the same as a young child needs more sleep. So babies sleep all the time, it seems, although they seem to keep you awake for a long time as well. But the reason for that is they're obviously growing and developing, so there's a lot going on with a baby. The same as with an athlete, they're training a body really, really, really hard, so it needs lots of growth and repair to be able to recover from the intense bouts of activity, which is why lots of athletes sleep in the day to help recover their body for morning and afternoon training sessions, so that they have that complete rest. And lots of athletes will rest massively before a big event or a race and do very, very little, hardly move around, so that the body is in the best condition to be able to perform. So we've got pain and we've got inflammation, and I've said if you have a painkiller or an anti-inflammatory, it cuts off communication. But when that communication starts to open up channels again because the pain relief and the anti-inflammatory is wearing off, that's when your body starts to jump in to try and help and sort of help the situation. Now the other problem is if you have pain relief and anti-inflammatory, what tends to happen then is you can overcome a problem because mentally you can't feel any pain. So because you can't feel any pain, you can override your nervous system to be able to walk, to move your arm, to go upstairs, to jump up and down, to jog, to do all sorts of things within the permutations or the limits of the various pain relief or the anti-inflammatory. So you can overcome the initial thing, which is to move less and rest more. And most of us have to do that in life because you've got to go to work, or you've got to take the kids to school, or you've got to pick the kids up, or you're on holiday, or there's an activity. So invariably, life gets in the way. Hence, pain relief and anti-inflammatories are the best-selling drugs on the market globally. So they make more money from paracetamol and anti-inflammatory drugs than they do with any other drugs. Hence, you can buy them pretty much anywhere. And obviously, they've not been deregulated or changed. The only thing is you can't buy lots of them because of overdose. But the fact that you can overdose on them should tell you that they are quite strong. So they are effective, but only for short periods. And all they do is cut off communication. So they don't actually help at all with anything. Now, the reason that's important is that you have pain for a reason. The idea is that if you've hurt something, you do need some initial rest to do the least amount. So any movements that you do need to be around range of movement, but not necessarily loading. So if I use a knee as an example, you've hurt your knee, say it was playing football, say you've had a fall, it's swollen up a little bit, so it's bruised and it's quite injured and it feels quite uncomfortable. Initially, you want to, if you can, elevate it, because obviously that helps with venous return and getting fluids and cells and everything to that area. By resting it, you're not making it any worse. So it's allowing the body to have that initial recovery phase. Now, obviously, if you can do that for 2 or 3 days, that's brilliant. You can then get up, do some light movement, start walking and moving again, and that's great. But most people, we have to take some sort of medication to speed the process up, because we've got to go to work, we've got to do something, we've got to go here, we've got to go there, or we're just going to get on with just basic functions around the home, looking after young kids, whatever it is. So we have to overcome a problem, and the quickest way to do that is to switch off the communication. It hasn't happened, so we can carry on. And that's part of the mentality problem that people have. So if you have pain, the idea is that it's there for a reason, so it's meant to stop you doing something. So that's the first thing to consider. Inflammation, I've said, is a really good thing, and people get swollen knees and it swells up quite a lot because there's not a lot of tissue around there. It's mainly joint and tendons and ligaments, but not lots of tissue, like there's not lots of muscle or anything else around there. So it's quite a complex joint. There's quite a lot of bones and other bits and stuff that are involved. But also, the other thing is there's no other real tissue, so it's quite hard. So within that, you do tend to find that knees swell up. And the biggest problem with knees swelling up is movement. So what the body's trying to do is to stop you moving it with inflammation. To sort of balance that with everyday life, you need to do some movement, but it needs to be unweighted. So it needs to be not loaded. And lots of people still walk around and, oh, well, I'll manage this, or I'll stand here, or do this. And it's about doing that least amount in that first 24 hours. That's not always the case. I'm not saying it is. But if you can, it'll make a big difference. And then also it's about recovering in steps. So where people forget is that the reason for pain is it's a limiter. So the idea is if it starts to become painful, okay, how painful is it? And we use a pain scale. So if you're around a 2 and a 3, that's quite low level pain. A 6 is quite intense. 8s, 9s and 10s is you should definitely be sitting down and doing that activity. But we have the capacity to overcome pain at quite a high level. And there's loads of examples of people doing it, but you can definitely overcome pain for a short period of time. So what you need to look at is within threshold, what you can do with that pain level today. Inflammation is something to worry about less. So lots of people with inflammation use either heat or cold. They both do similar things, and they're looking at manipulating your circulation. So what the heat does is it forces blood, and it's a bit like breathing out, so it forces blood to move back to the heart to get recycled and move to other parts of the body so that it can cool down, because your body likes to be at a certain temperature, 37 degrees. So by putting heat there, it forces the blood to move, which takes cells, which takes some of the waste products. So that's quite a good thing, heat. And then conversely, lots of people use cold, which is to calm down inflammation. So if you've got cold, you actually stimulate more flow, because what happens is to help regulate the body, it cools obviously other areas of your body down. If they're inflamed, it cools that area down. If you have cold for quite a long time, what you tend to find is that the swelling doesn't decrease, it starts to increase again, because you have more blood flow. So that what happens is initially it all drops because it's cold and everything comes in to get homeostasis to bring the temperature up. Once it gets to 37 degrees, what happens then is the blood does start dissipating again. So cold, I would recommend, is probably slightly better than heat, just on a process. But to use both, people use different things at different times. But a lot of people do a combination. So I would do some cold, then some heat, then some cold, then some heat. And what it's doing is it's forcing your body's natural systems to be able to heal the area. The other thing that's key is to also then look and say, well, okay, I've got pain, so I've limited what I'm doing. I've got inflammation, and I know that if it swells up too much, it can be more incapacitating. So I need to do some weightless movement. But the key thing is not to do it and go, right, I've done 2 minutes of my weightless movement. So I'm sitting on a chair, my knee's injured, as we've used as an example. I'm now going to raise my leg up so it goes up nice and straight, and then I'm going to lower it down so it bends. And we'll do that 7 or 8 times. You need to do that 7 or 8 times, 9 times, 10 times. Short break, do it again. Short break, do it again. And then the next hour, do exactly the same. The next hour, do exactly the same. It doesn't need to be weighted. It's just literally moving the joint. That can be a knee, it can be a hip, it can be an ankle, a shoulder, a hand, elbow, whatever. It's to move the body. By moving the body, what you're doing then is obviously helping with circulation, which then helps with this inflammation, but also the pain elements for swapping cells around so that it's constantly fresh cells. If these fresh cells, they can help with the pain, help with the inflammation. The last thing is obviously moving generates electricity, as we know. By generating electricity, that's directly helping the cells. So it means the cells don't start working anaerobically, which means without oxygen, because they're getting tired and they're in that area and they're working quite hard. It allows the cells to work longer using aerobic respiration as opposed to anaerobic. And the difference between the two, aerobic respiration is like long distance running. So if we're using as British athletes, we could use someone like Mo Farah. He's good at running long distance. He does it at a fast pace and he's won loads of medals for it, but he keeps going at a very quick pace. Bear in mind that his marathon pace is 13 miles an hour, which is faster than most normal people can sprint even. Then you've got the other extreme where it's very, very short duration but high output. So that would be looking at sprinting. That's anaerobic sort of respiration. And what that does is it means that you can have a really fast, big, acute change. And that tends to happen very early on in the first phase when you've got high pain and you've just hurt yourself. All the cells go into almost panic mode and they work anaerobically, so they work at very high intensity but waste a lot of energy. So that's a bit like Usain Bolt and sprinting, so they move over a known distance, 100 metres in that example, over a very quick time, so it's very, very fast. And they're running at roughly 26, 27 miles an hour. So that's a lot faster, significantly faster, that's like car speeds. So obviously that's very, very quick, but they can only maintain that for a short period of time. So when you initially have pain, it can be really, really like, oh God, it's absolutely killing me. It crashes quite quickly. When I say it crashes, it comes down to, it's really painful, but going from a 9 or a 10, it drops down to say around a 6 intense pain quite quickly. And the reason for that is all of your pain cells, your natural body healing, has all jumped in to try and help the situation. And they've all worked anaerobically, so they've worked without oxygen because they produce things very, very quickly. The next phase, what you want, and where it takes that time, is to work a slightly slower pace, but work aerobically, so that they're working with the body in that sort of sense, which is why the transfer is so important. Now, if you can keep moving, you generate electricity, which helps the cells work aerobically for longer, but it also helps the cells that were working anaerobically to start working aerobically. So you get like a double whammy, a 2 for 1. So the movement, even though it's not loaded, really, really helps, but not just for helping reduce swelling and maintaining, and say, a knee movement in this example. It also helps on a physiological level with generating electricity to help the cells. So that's quite an important sort of thing to think about. So anything to do with pain and inflammation, consider how painful it is, the type of medication, what happens in the sense it's such off communication, what you can do to help that, what movements you can do to help that, and then going forwards, how much medication you take. Now, the majority of people I speak to and work with, they do regulate how much medication. Most people appreciate that the side effects, long-term use of medication isn't necessarily good for the body. But everybody, myself included, at some point has had to have medication. I've had 2 or 3 major surgeries. So yes, I want you to knock me out. Yes, I want the epidural pain medication. I don't want you to do a hip replacement without. I think that would be quite painful. But by the same token, I've not had lots of pain relief post-surgery. So within that, there's a whole focus of what's rational and relevant, and then what's good for you as a body. So quite a different outlook. Obviously pain, inflammation, really, really good. Natural sort of mechanisms that your body's got to improve your body and repair it. But also we're addressing it from completely the wrong angle. So I hope you found this interesting and different. I'll be finishing here today. My next podcast is going to be on my initial sort of thoughts and findings with plantar fasciitis. So I will be speaking to you all again soon.